Dr. Belshaw. I'm going to take about 7 minutes of your time to talk about why I think digital literacies are important and how you can go about conceptualising them. So what I'm interested in is the difference between things like this, books, traditional printed matter, and things like this, things which are digital, which also involve reading and writing in some type of sense. So what are the types of literacies that are involved when you're moving from this type of environment with printed matter, reading and writing in a traditional sense, towards things which are reading and writing in some type of metaphorical digital sense? Are gestures involved here? What is it about the literacies of the digital which are different over and above the literacies which are involved in this particular world? So in the late 1980s and 1990s and even into the 21st century, we've had this concept of information literacy. And the whole point behind that is that information is taken away from being printed matter, from being traditional print literacy, but also it affects things like Google search, it affects kind of digital literacies as well. So I think that's important. I think it's a bridging term. I think it's important to start moving towards what I consider to be literacies of the digital and move away from this bridging term, which has been useful up until now. In 1997, Paul Gilster published a book called Digital Literacy. In that book he gave over 30 definitions of digital literacy. But the important idea which he got across was that digital literacy is all about capturing ideas and not keystrokes. And that is to do with not just traditional conceptions of print literacy, but thinking about literacy as a more socio-linguistic construct rather than just the cognitive idea that was going on before. And I think that's important as it underpins what goes on with digital literacies, or literacies of the digital as they're increasingly becoming known as. One of the problems of digital literacies is that lots of academics and people who are researching this area conceive of a particular type of digital literacy as being an umbrella term. So media literacy, for example, gets to be the umbrella term and everything else is a subset of that. Digital literacy is the same, information literacy. So one of the problems is that you need to seek out a matrix of literacies and a skill set which you can give young people which isn't necessarily predicated upon one particular type of literacy. What I want to argue is that there's really 8 different C's involved in digital literacies, and the whole point is that they're an overlapping matrix. Some are more important in some contexts and some are less important. So based on my research and my work, I believe there's 8 different elements of digital literacies. The first is the cultural element, then there's the cognitive, the constructive, the communicative, the confident, the creative, the critical and the civic. And I'd be hesitant to rank those in any type of order because I think it's really important that depending on the context, the people who are involved, including the students, rank those in order of importance. In some particular situations, the cognitive is going to be the thing which is most important, actually understanding how things are made up. Whereas in others, it's the communicative element which is going to take precedence. And I think it's important to have that conversation. So that's why I'm wary of imposing one particular definition of digital literacies upon people. And I think that really this matrix, this way of dealing with the elements of digital literacy is actually more useful than just imposing one particular version of digital literacy. So all around the world there's different conceptions of digital literacies. So you've got the UK having different conception to Australia and Europe and Singapore and USA, and all around the world there's different ideas of what the dominant type of new literacy is. So if the question is something like, which digital literacies practices should the average 14-year-old be familiar with? Well, the answer is, it depends. I know that's not the answer you want to take back to your school or college or university or workplace, but unfortunately that is the answer, because context is everything. Yes, we do live in a massive worldwide marketplace of ideas and knowledge, but really, that context depends heavily still upon geography, but also upon the networks which you're in and the networks which you want to induct people into. So I think it's important to have the conversations. It's important to map out what you mean by digital literacies in terms of ranking the different elements, and also having the conversation in terms of are there any that we don't really want to focus on and any which we think we're going to deprecate in some way. I want to suggest, therefore, that there's a radius of interest and a radius of opportunity. I'd like to thank Paul Golding for this nice kind of way of explaining this. There's a radius of interest in terms of what the person who you're trying to influence is interested in, but also the areas of opportunity. And I think that depends heavily upon technology these days. The things which you're able to do, and that little intersect there, that thing where it says what's here, I think that there, if you can find the overlap between the things that people are interested in and the things which you're able to do because of technology, well, that's something which needs digital literacy, and I think that's something which you need to have the conversation about. So that is quite a nice little diagram to use, perhaps, if you're trying to explain to people why we need to change what we're doing in schools and what we're doing in colleges and what we're doing in universities. That's a nice little diagram to be able to explain, well, that little overlap there, that's what digital literacies is all about. It's about practices. So if I could go back, if I could start again, if I could just take 30 seconds of time and perhaps distill everything that I've said down into 3 simple, very easy bullet points to remember. Perhaps put everything just on one slide, boil everything down so when you go back you've got something to easily implement. If you can go away and do something from this presentation, well, what I would do is I'd boil everything down to this. I'd boil it down to there's 8 essential elements of digital literacies. Definitions need to be co-created to have power. And you need to get started. There's lots of resources to help you. So that's it. That's the essential elements of digital literacies. I believe there's 8. I believe they're very important. I believe you need to have conversations about them. And if you want to know more about digital literacies and more about my work, do go to dougbelshaw.com and click through to my thesis and my work on digital literacies.